Welcome back, class. How are you guys doing today? Today we're going to be talking about World War One and more specifically what led up to it. Before we get to that, though, before we start talking about the activity from yesterday, I want to tell you a little story about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and how it should not have happened. So the reason it became a plot is because there was a lot of ethnic tension between the Serbians and the Bosnians, and to put it plainly, the Bosnians were not good to the Serbian people. There's a long history there that doesn't involve what we're talking about today, but there's some history, and some tension. So when there were a lot of Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina that did not like Archduke Franz Ferdinand, so when he took a trip there and did a parade through the streets, it was an opportunity they were not going to miss. So they made this whole plan because the route they were going to take was very well publicized. They wanted to make sure that everyone possible had a chance to see him. So the route they took was very well publicized, and they had him spread out throughout this entire route to make sure that someone got him. Along that route, the first two people didn't do it. The first guy got scared. He had already been part of a failed assassination attempt beforehand, and nerves got to him. He just had his bomb in his hand, was wondering, like, what if this doesn't work again, and didn't do it. The guy after him, who was within sight, saw that he backed out, and then let nerves get to him as well. The third guy, though, had very little to lose because he was diagnosed with terminal tuberculosis. There was no cure for it. He was already going to die, and he was very fired up about this issue. So in his haste, he threw his bomb very flamboyantly, enough so that when it was in the air, the driver of the car saw it. So the driver of that car sped up. So instead of landing in front of it, it actually bounced the back. And in his haste, he forgot that there was a 10-second delay. So instead of ending up under his car and exploding, it ended up two cars behind him, blew up the fourth car and a bunch of Serbians in the area. Actually, exactly against what they're trying to do. These Serbian casualties ended up weighing down on them. The Archduke sped off to City Hall, and City Hall interrupted the speech the mayor was doing to welcome him and asked, "Hey, I'm a guest here. Why am I being attacked as a guest?" The plan the mayor proposed was that the army would take them on the rest of their journey to make sure nothing else happened, but that was declined because as an Archduke, you have to be, in lack of a better word, fancy. The uniforms were not snazzy enough for him. They were too plain and not fitting of an Archduke, so they denied that. The plan they solidified on was going to go to the hospital where the casualties were put on. So the Archduke and his wife are going to go visit the casualties as a publicity stunt of sorts. Only problem is, no one told the lead driver. That lead driver, not knowing where they were going, ended up going down the same route he was already going to go. When they took the turn, I think it was towards the museum. It was towards the museum instead of the hospital. One of the attendants noticed the issue and tried to get him to stop. The only problem is the car they were using at the time did not have reverse gear. So they actually had to stop the vehicle, get out, push it, meaning they were stalled on a public road directly after assassination attempt. On this road that just happened to be in front of Gavrilo Princip, at a little deli he was at, trying to collect his thoughts after failing. So you gotta imagine your Princip, upon this assassination attempt that failed. Not only did it fail and not kill the target, it actually ended up killing innocent Serbians who you're trying to protect. You look up and you see your target stalled in a car, unable to move. So he raised his gun, took two shots off, and killed the Archduke in a series of coincidences that should not have happened. If I watched a movie about this, and had it not been history, I would not believe it. It's too well set up, too lucky. It was a wrong turn every time, at every turn. And that's essentially how World War One came to start. And that's my little story. A little good, funny history part of this. So now, if you guys remember yesterday, we broke off into groups, and you ended up forming alliances, making decisions, and saying what you would do in the situation. Now, if you remember, there was a lot of prodding questions. The reason I prodded you is because there was information that was in your packet but couldn't be shared with others. So I guided you through this, gave you little questions. If you asked, I'm sorry, I apologize. If you remember, the questions were always, hey, what if you presented with this situation? Or, hey, what if you did this? Actually, Justin, if you remember, I talked to you about it and said, hey, you see your friend Jacob over here is new to the school, very very popular, very energetic, and wants to make sure everyone knows him. He has now had an issue with Melissa. He's new to the school, doesn't know you're friends with Melissa. But now he has got an issue. he comes up and says he has an issue with Melissa, and you want nothing to do with this. So in his eyes, you're gonna protect him or be on his side, but in reality, you're just protect him if something happens. If someone aggresses him, you protect him, but you're not getting involved with him. And that's essentially what happened here. Is where you were Italy, Jacob is Germany, and Melissa is France. Jacob just got here, just joined in, became a new union after France lost the Prussian War. Germany unified as its own country and became a new power in Europe. They were trying to establish their dominance. They want to establish a colony, or a series of colonies, form an empire, just like British and France. Apologize, take a break. Sorry, similar to what Britain and France did. They want to have a worldwide empire. So in their haste, they made alliances without knowing the situation. Italy, on the other hand, formed an alliance with France in secret, saying that if Germany is the aggressor, they are not going to help them. If something happens and someone attacks Germany first, Italy is on their side, but if they are the aggressor, they are not helping. And this is how we ended up in the situation with the alliances starting. So, what was that? Oh, wait. So the alliances started because of the empire situation we were talking about. So they started making alliances because every person wanted an empire. I'm not sure if you've ever heard, there was a saying going that the sun never sets on the British Empire. That's not because they're productive. It's not because, I don't know, they're always happy-go-lucky like that. The issue was they were so large and so well set out that somewhere in the British Empire it was daytime at all times. That's how large the empire was. They made them a lot of money. France was well spread out throughout the world, bringing in money through its colonies. All the small nations in the area wanted that. So they began fighting for places like when Africa got, for lack of a better word, torn up. When it got opened up, everyone just rushed down to get whatever natural resources they can find. It wasn't. They were trying to capitalize on the ability, the resources they had to expand their empire. And in an effort to do that, they formed alliances to make sure that they get the money. The ones they don't get the money. All right. Now, let me scroll down here. Yes. So as they're grabbing land in Africa, they are adding tension to what they were already doing. They're already fighting back and forth. So all this new tension just adds to the issue. So when Austria and Hungary declared war on Serbia, the ethnic issue I told you, Serbians are very closely tied to Russia. So as soon as they declared war, Russia started mobilizing. They did not have any direct action immediately, but they started mobilizing and Germany took interest. Germany said, hey, you need to stop this or we're going to fight back. But they didn't even wait for an argument or an answer. Germany immediately started mobilizing too. Now, what does mobilizing mean? Not quite. That is what deployment or invading means. You'll go through, and if troops are actually sent to a unit or to another country, that is called deploying the unit or invading the country. Mobilizing is actually just getting everything ready. So what happens is they gather troops, they gather supplies, they get them all together so that when the order comes, they're already ready to go. That's the difference. So Russia had not committed to anything yet. They had their army ready, but they had not done anything. Germany saw this, and they actually saw this, warned Russia to stop, and immediately invaded Belgium. The reason for this is they needed to get through Belgium to get to France. The immediate goal was to take France out of the equation so they can fight Russia and avoid a two-front war. Now, a two-front war is actually meaning exactly what it sounds, having to fight a war in the east and the west. Germany didn't want to do that. They don't have the population like Russia does. They had the technology, they were militarized, but they don't have enough to go around, essentially. So if they can come through, sweep through Belgium and take out France, and then race back to Russia, they had a fair chance of winning. And that's why it started so quickly. An early war stood to benefit Germany over anybody else. Didn't give anyone else a chance to actually go through there. And I'll actually say, many argue this invasion of Belgium is actually what started World War I. And not everyone agrees. You'll hear it most commonly said that the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand did it because that started the alliance dominoes. But it didn't become an actual world war until Germany invaded Belgium. Now, personally, if you go ask about that, it goes back to what we were talking about the day before. What is the word we said about the tensions in Europe? and the relations between the countries. No, bad? Bad is good, because bad is a good example. They were not good relations, but that's not quite the answer I'm looking for. Unproductive doesn't quite encapsulate the whole idea. They were not productive at all. Oh, I'm sorry. I actually don't know what unproductive in Spanish is. If you can ask somebody. Maria, do you actually know what unproductive is in Spanish? Improductivo. Okay, got it. Perfect. Does that help? Yes? Perfect. All right, if there's any other questions, just let me know about it. We'll try to help this together. Okay, so back to describing the European relations. Yes, Jacob, tension. The word is tension. It's very important, at least from my example. Remember what we talked about yesterday, the paper. If you take a very sharp samurai sword and drop a piece of paper on it, it's impressive because you hold it, it's just sitting right up, and it slices the paper. The sword has to be extremely sharp, has to be at a perfect angle, and it's impressive because the paper has zero weight to it, and it's very flexible. It's not rigid, it doesn't have anything, so it actually is very hard to cut. And I use this example because you know exactly what happened. You know exactly why the paper was cut. And that any change in this, you know it wouldn't have happened. Now, if you take that paper and hold both sides of it, piece of paper here. Take that paper and just hold both sides of it and pull it tight. The tighter you pull this, the easier it is to cut. Now, theoretically, if you were to pull it tight enough and get some machine to hold both sides and pull it just tighter, just exactly to where the fibers can hold it, you would say something small as blowing on it will break it. And that is kind of where Europe was at the time. It was so tight and so tension-filled that anything would have happened. Had Franz Ferdinand not been assassinated and Germany not invaded Belgium, the war still probably would have happened. It would have had some other cause, probably some other outcome, but the war would have happened regardless. And that's why there's so many questions of why it started, and I beg to differ that we have our reasons why it started, but the answers aren't as important as everyone put them on to see.